Some commander players treat common sense like it's a luxury item, like they can't afford it at all. And they build their personalities around sarcasm and red flags for all I know, because they'll take great points like this from Rachel Weeks and just completely misconstrue it, not understand it whatsoever, and do the whole bean soup thing of it all, where someone is making a bean soup and someone asks, can I make this without the beans? No, it's a bean soup, damn it. Everyone on the internet wants to get involved in a way that doesn't matter to them. Regardless of what you think of the command zone itself, where it's gone, I think it's undeniable that Rachel Weeks is one of the best things to happen to it, being one of a great content creator, but also one of a great informed opinion, a great person as well. I've never personally met them, but they come off as a great person. So Rachel coming across with this tweet, rather controversial to some people, and I've seen a lot of people in my comment sections have a really bad take on this as well. Put 38 plus lands in your commander decks. You'll mulligan less or better, you'll play more real games, you'll win more, and you'll have more fun, or at least be less frustrated as to your game state. Now, I think this is pretty sound advice. I've talked about this before. 38 might be a new number for me, but I've always talked about running at least 36. I think running more lands not only today is easier in a commander deck, but also more needed based on your bracket, based on how you want to draw cards, based on how you want to gain advantage, and the idea of multi-spelling. There's many situations where in your commander games, people miss their land drops and aren't able to go about the plan that they wanted. Even if they didn't want to cast anything on 5, that 5th land drop lets you go to 6 if you draw another one, and then at least allows you to cast a 6 mana spell, where on that turn previously maybe only cast a 4 mana spell and again weren't able to use up that mana, but even that mana left over has the potential to bluff based on the type of player that you might have put yourself off to be. These are all ways in which hitting your land drops really does matter. And in today's video, I wanted to go over a couple of ways where this can be beneficial to you, why you would want to run this, but also why this might be actually not running that many lands might actually be holding you back. Right? And again, I've talked about this in plenty of videos. I want to go over this based on some reposts that have been made on this tweet and address them directly, as I believe these are the more common arguments against something like this. I think people just in general get very frustrated with being told what to do. They found mediocre success with something that they've already tried and are unwilling or unable to see past some of the results that have come their way. So let's address that from the top here. This tweet, honestly, love all of this. This is why I repost, liked, and bookmarked it and everything. Engage with it in every way. This should not be a controversial take whatsoever. First of all, this tweet, amazing, right? Just saying no and just hitting the slot machine, right? Just people that believe you can keep doing this, you can keep running less than 35, 33, running like 30 or less lands and be successful. First of all, someone in the comment section is going to come at me with the bean soup answer of it all, be like, well, I play CDH, which is less than, okay, so this isn't for you. You know this isn't for you. You're being disingenuous by commenting below and telling me about your less than 30 land count CDH deck. You know you're being disingenuous. You don't add anything to this argument. So why bother unless it's for comedy purposes? If you're trying to be funny, sure, I'll allow it. Go into my comment section and be funny. I would love it if a bunch of comedic people came into my comment section and started being funny. As long as it wasn't making fun of me. Don't make fun of me, okay? Anyway, this is fantastic. Everyone else, I don't want to hear about your niche situation where you do this and this. That's the thing. People always bring up their one commander deck that has a low mana curve and has a high amount of single mana card draw or something like that. And yes, in that situation, I can see where a lower than 38 land count can be valuable, especially if your commander might have a converted mana cost of 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 and everything. And then something like that can be valuable, but that's not the truth for all of your commander decks. And again, on average, People have multiple commander decks, 2, 3, sometimes even 4+ commander decks. There are many other people that have 20 commander decks. Me, myself, I have 10. I had a bunch, and then once the bracket system came out, I spread myself out. And for each one of those decks, I've had to take a different philosophy in terms of how I want to go about my mana, how much ramp do I want to put in, how much ramp that comes up with a spell giving more lands versus an artifact. Is my commander synergizing with artifacts on the battlefield or being reduced by artifacts? Or do I need more lands? Does my commander care about landfall decks? For some reason, I've actually heard people tell me they run landfall strategies with like 36 or less lands. I think you're actually objectively doing that wrong, and I believe you have found success, but eventually you will find more failure, or you are choosing to be willfully ignorant of the failures that you have found. I'm just saying, right? I don't think you're actually going through the ringer and optimizing your deck the best way you can. And then the counter argument could be, I'm not here to optimize. Again, then this discussion isn't for you. We're talking about an optimization standpoint where you can stand to succeed more from playing these lands. The argument then is, if you want to succeed more, you should do this. Again, the conversation is for you. Again, be cognizant of what this is for. Okay, we're not trying to police the way you can play Commander. We're trying to help you play it better should you want to meet a certain condition. This person says, if you want to play a good commander, do 10 card opening draws and then put 3 at the bottom. Leads to near 0 mulligans, doesn't require you to heavily edit your mana base like Insanity, and gives you options to find your opening hand and see what you want. See, this is a problem right here. I talked about this in a video from last week. One of the things that is holding back every single kitchen table Magic player that I have come across, obviously this isn't going to be every single one. I'm making a generalization. Bad mulligan rules, or consistent mulligan rules that aren't helping you improve as a player. Now, if you are playing at a kitchen table and you are just in that pod itself, this is probably perfectly fine. You are not leaving beyond this. You are not going on spell table. You're not going to the LGS. You're not opening yourself up to a different ecosystem, which is a problem in and of itself. But if you're enjoying your own pod, then it's perfectly fine. If you're in that environment, this is okay. But if you play from this environment and then you are the 1 to 2 people in that play group that maybe go out to the LGS and play better, and you're always wondering why you're frustrated at the LGS, you're not getting your game off at the LGS, it's because the mulligan rules are probably better there. Stop free mulliganing and build better decks. This isn't a thing anywhere else in Magic. Yes, when it comes to a casual commander game, if the discussion is had beforehand and people are okay with that, then sure, go ahead. But that's not going to be the thing with every single pod. Some players want to play a more casual game, but they also do want to follow some semblance of the rules. They don't want to, just go willy-nilly all over, because at the end of the day, when it comes to free mulligan rules like this, all it stands to benefit is the high quality decks, not the quantity decks. The decks that are looking for a key specific combination of cards to go about their game plan, the quality decks, those are the decks that stand to gain the most. The quantity decks will on average get there anyway. The ones that want to assemble a couple of pieces and they have a bunch of redundancy of that, they want to get a certain ramp spell, get a certain planeswalker, get a certain removal spell, whatever it is, they will on average, if their deck is built that way, find those cards anyway. So bad mulligan rules like this just lead to you deck building worse, because of course, if you draw 10 cards and put 3 at the bottom, you're going to see more cards on average. You're never going to have land problems. You're going to be able to run less lands on average because you're just going to see more and be able to get off to more explosive starts. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to play to normal mulligan rules that already exist in the game instead of making some up. Even free mulligans is, I would say, arguably better than this. And then we can improve ourselves as a player and make better deck building and gameplay decisions off of that. Next up, counterpoint, put less lands and more card draw. Mulligan is good. Lands only matter that much in the early turns and only need some, varies deck to deck. Card draw is good in all states of the game. Drawing lands drags you the more games you go on. Okay, I could expand this even more. I would argue counterpoint, play more win conditions. Why play more card draw when you can just draw in your win conditions? Then you could argue win conditions don't matter in the early game. Depends on what the win conditions are, though. Depends on the converted mana cost of them and the speed of them, all that stuff. I think this point is a little disingenuous as well. In order to run more card draw, you need the mana to cast that card draw. Once you cast the card draw, you will draw into spells. Ideally, you don't want to spend your whole turn casting a card draw spell. So you want to then spend mana on the spells that you cast. You need lands on the battlefield, or lands to cast your ramp spells to have more lands to cast those spells, or lands to cast the mana rocks that then lead you to cast more spells later on. You want to be double spelling, triple spelling, quadruple spelling later in the game. So yes, run more card draw, but outside of blue, how many efficient ways are there to draw cards for 1 or 2 mana that don't require other conditions? Black has some 2 mana card draw spells. Green has some as well, but technically they're really conditional as well. Red does, but requires cards in your hand. So if you have cards that you want to keep in your hand to cast later down the line when you have more mana, you are now having to spend those to discard a card and draw more cards down the line. That's a more common way to draw cards now. And sometimes you have impulse draws where you can only play those cards right now. And so impulse draws are actually a great way to get rid of a bunch of lands off the top of your deck if you're playing more lands on average. Lands are a great thing to discard. And so there are so many ways where, yes, play more card draw, but in order to take full advantage of those card draw spells that you then draw into more spells with, you want more lands on average to then be able to play out, ramp into, do all that stuff. Just because you play more card draw doesn't mean that you are going to be able to find more lands. You're going to come into games where you have a low land count, you don't draw into your lands, and the minute you miss a land drop, you are likely, chances are you are likely behind. Again, there are situations where you are playing a deck that is relatively aggressive. The commander might be lower converted mana cost. You are built around your commander. And yes, that is a situation where a lower land count can happen, but that is not uniform. That is not uniform. That is not a universal experience of all commanders out there. You have 1 to 2 commander decks that work like that. Your other commander decks do not work like that. Do not take a situation that happens in one and make it happen, like use that example for everything else. That's disingenuous, which should be the theme of this video and people's arguments for it. Now, a great way to run more lands, MDFCs. This has been an example that many people have talked about before. Salubrious Snail mentioned it in one of his bigger videos out there about how many lands you should run and everything. And it's one of a mini example that's actually listed in response to the tweet as well. In black, you have some great ones as well. I mean, as a Oops All Spells player in Legacy, I can recognize many of these fantastic spells. You have something like Boggart Trawler, which is a 3/1 for 3 on right behind my camera. When it enters exile, target player's graveyard, which is fantastic, or it's an untapped black land. Agadeem's Awakening is a reanimation spell that can turn into an untapped black land. Black Bloom Rogue is just like a random menace creature. If you have some type of ability that triggers off of dealing damage, this is going to be a great way to get that through. And also cares about cards in your graveyard, which we're going to talk about in a second, but can be a tap land. Removal, that's also a land. Removal, that's also a land. Protection, that's also a land. And then even back here, each opponent loses 6 mana. Each opponent loses 4 life. You gain 4 life. I mean, hey, that's a 12 point life swing, and you just gain 4 life. That can matter in some situations off the Zoff consumption. That can be a tap line. There are other MDFCs, but really when it comes to the MDFCs that are lands on the flip side, that is a very easy way to include a spell that can be functional in your strategy that also ends up being a land. So these MDFCs and the ways we have designed Modern Magic make it even easier for you to run more lands so that you can go about the strategies that you want to and make them work in your own way. Past that, mana sinks are probably on average something a lot of players should be including more of. Luminarch Ascension, a classic one I've had in my pod for a very long time. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if you didn't lose life this turn, put a quest counter on it, and then you can play white and 1, create a 4/4 angel creature token with flying, activate this only if Luminarch Ascension has 4 more quest counters on it. It's with the old templating of Magic where it's not like once per turn or anything. So if you had a ton of extra mana from playing a ton of extra lands or having mana left over, there's no timing restriction on something like Luminarch Ascension either, so you can just start creating 4/4 angels over and over and over again. Many decks out there, the one thing they suffer from is just passive value from different things, whether it be counters entering, gaining life, having extra mana. These things are very valuable on average in any commander deck. Luminarch Ascension is one that personally, close to my heart, as I mentioned in my pod for a very long time. Luminarch Ascension is a fantastic Magic card that ends up being that type of mana sink that you can put a bunch of mana into that you have extra from playing out all your lands, ramping out, whatever it might be. Having more MDFCs makes it easier to draw lands or play lands. Luminarch Ascension being a mana sink allows you to use some of that extra mana that you might have left over. And then finally, something like discard. This is a 2-part thing. Having card draw that maybe discards or takes advantage of the amount of cards in your hand is a great way to filter through. So for example, if you have something like Faithless Looting, I like Breakthrough just because it's a fantastic dredge card in Eternal formats. You know, this one says draw 4 cards and choose X cards in your hand, discard the rest. This is a great way to, as I mentioned, to get rid of extra cards in your hand and fill up your graveyard, because nowadays with the value that we get off of average cards, there are many cards out there, even in white, even in red, that care about the amount of cards in your graveyard. We have graveyard mechanics in green and black and in blue in some ways with like instant and sorceries and stuff. So taking advantage of extra cards in your graveyard is a very easy thing to do, whether it be with Delve or the count itself. You can use effects like this to get rid of the extra cards, not even just lands, but cards that care about being in the graveyard. And then you can take advantage of things like Threshold. So if you were to feed those lands out, you're drawing a bunch of lands, you want them in your hand, you're going to get rid of them. Great, you keep the spells, but then to gain passive value from these lands that you have a bunch of that may have some level of value, they might be drawing you cards, or might be like Barbarian Ring where you can sacrifice them to do damage. You could then have Threshold on some of your cards to take good advantage of them. Cards like Cabal Pit being like a good removal spell, Cabal Ritual for all my Storm players out there and combo players, Cephalid Coliseum for my players that love to mill people out and force them to draw on that turn and win that way. There's so many cards out there that are really good with Threshold. Far Wanderings is a fun one as well. Search your library for a basic land. If you have Threshold, those 7 or more cards in your graveyard, instead search your library for 3 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Far Wanderings is one of my favorite RAM cards out there. If you can make that work, wow, does this have a good way to thin out your deck? And I think that's the last thing I want to mention. One of the great things is, especially if you're in green, and there's ways to do this in colorless and other kind of colors in general, in many ways to remove lands from your deck, put them in your hand, or put them into your battlefield. This is a great way to thin out your deck. And deck thinning does matter in a format with 99 card singleton, or if you're playing decks like Hera Perrin or something like that, where it may not exactly be singleton. Improving consistency is key, and over the course of the game, taking lands out of your deck through ramp or tutoring or whatever, taking them out, being one of the easier targets out there, is going to be a fantastic way to increase your consistency over time. And stuff like this mathematically really does matter and is hard to visualize unless you have this happen over a course of a couple of games. If on average you're playing longer commander games, it may be in lower bracket tables, maybe like bracket 2s, bracket 1s, you can generally see the trend that the player that wins probably has more mana or more land. So more mana could also just be more mana rocks and everything, but on average, they probably have access to more ways to cast spells. They're able to double spell, triple spell, and that is a result of not only ramping, but likely playing more lands to then be able to play more win conditions, more combos, more combination of cards coming together to be able to win the game. And so that deck thinning not only allows them to find the card draw spells, to draw into more cards that aren't non-land, but it also just allows them to be more consistent and increase their consistency over time over a bunch of games. Deck thinning is like this meme that happens and it is brought up every so often in like constructed games and everything of 60 card 1v1, but it also does in many ways matter in Commander in a deck of 38 lands, maybe 35, whatever you're playing at that point. If you play on average like maybe 6 to 7 lands, you ramp out some more, 3 to somewhere in the range of 5 to 7, whatever. Maybe you're in green and you're ramping out even more. That is almost a quarter to sometimes half of the lands coming out of your deck. If you're drawing and discarding, maybe more cards are being brought out. And so you're able to take out a lot more of the dead draws and then convert them into spells afterwards. It matters. It may not be the most statistically significant thing in the world, but it does matter statistically. That's the point of it happening a non-zero amount of times. Now, when it comes to your cards that you want to look for, one thing I want to try and do in a couple of my videos is list some of the resources I have, because I'm be using some of these, and you know what? Scryfall, just sponsor me. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna do this with Moxfield as well. Scryfall, sponsor me. I love this website. The other day, I was actually someone in a creator Discord was like, "Yo, how do you get images of like cards without like the white borders on them?" I'm like, yo, folks, hold on. Yo, Scryfall been doing this for a hot minute. Download PNG. The amount of creators I see that download images of cards, they'll like right click save image, that keeps the corners on them. Download PNG, you can even download art crop and it takes this out and it removes the corners off of them. Anyway, Scryfall, please hit me up with that. Anyway, The goal of Rachel's tweet is to make your games more consistent and just a better experience in general. The fact that you can look at this tweet and have a lot of negative connotations is probably just the problem with the internet in general, right? Again, we're not telling you how to play your games. We're not trying to attack your niche one-off situation where you can prove this example wrong. This is on average. The vast majority of Commander players out there are more casual, and they can stand to gain something from this, whether it be someone in their play group or a couple of people, whatever, that are randomly coming across this tweet, going online and spreading the word to their play group. This can only be a positive thing. I think a lot of people get upset when they are told what to do, when they don't realize a lot of this is just average advice. Follow it if you do, follow it if you don't. It will probably help you. And that's about it, right? It's just like someone telling you to eat your vegetables, right? Like, yeah, okay, I'm eating broccoli, I'm eating this, I'm eating that. But maybe if you added kale to your diet, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Yes, you're eating a bunch of vegetables, but this one specific vegetable has a great benefit to it. You could probably throw it in your salad a little bit in there, just, you know, just mask it in there, and it'll be a great benefit to you. Right? And oh, I don't need kale. I can just go about and be a healthy person without it. See, I'm perfectly fine now. Yeah. But it can only stand to improve things, right? Like that's all we're trying to do. Rachel's not trying to stir up controversy. Obviously, this is going to be a controversial thing because many people feel strongly about it, but it's not going to be anything, as I mentioned, inherently negative. This isn't holding you back, right? Your games aren't going to necessarily get worse when you don't listen to this or whatever. So you need to fight the fight against it. You need to go repost this tweet and make sure your point gets across and everyone likes your tweet and you become Twitter famous. And all of a sudden you become a content creator and everyone listens to your thoughts. It's not what's going on here. Folks, on average, you are likely required to run more lands on average. As I mentioned, there are going to be examples where you run less, especially when it comes to CEDH. But if you list that as an example, you are just being disingenuous. You are arguing for the sake of arguing. Your point doesn't mean anything because this tweet literally does not address you, right? Unless you're trying to be funny, in which, fine, go be funny in my comment section. Regardless, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. This is a fun point that gets brought up every so often, but I love to see when it gets reignited in many ways. So many big content creators out there, so many big minds that play so much more Commander than all of you in the comment section have this opinion. So it's shocking to me that so many of you refuse to even try and implement it in your decks.